Okay, go.
All right. Good morning. For those of y'all that don't know me, again, I'm Preston Williams, and I'm the horticulture manager over ATP. And it's a very new garden, and we're still having some growing pains, and so we'll be ironing all those out as the time goes on. And we're very excited about continuing to grow the garden and adding more programming in the coming year. And I've been talking with Nancy Nance about potential horticultural classes we can do. And so also, I'm overseeing ATP and the lagoon, and it's just me and one full-time gardener who is brand new and also new to this country. So I'll take all the help I can get. And so right now we have all the winter crops in the ground, and everything fared pretty well in the little light frost we had last week. And a lot of the winter crops are slower to produce, so it'll be a while before we'll be harvesting all those Brussels sprouts and onions and fennel and everything. But so there's not too much upkeep as far as the veggies go right now, but with the the standards we maintain here at the Arboretum, there's always plenty of maintenance work, and I'm happy to work with anyone's abilities is what they're comfortable doing in the garden. There's always some way you can help. And what else? That's mostly what I had to say. What questions y'all have about the garden?
I volunteer on Sunday. I have some questions that people keep asking me.
Yes.
One of them is, how do you cover the crops during the day? They wonder if they try cauliflower and things at home, and they say, what do you do?
As far as?
As kids, the winter control.
Oh.
Frost control.
Yeah, they can handle it. They should be fine.
So why can't they do it in the garden? And why do you think about cauliflower and some of those I thought needed more cool weather temperatures than we have here?
Yeah, they'll do fine in our winters. They should be produced just fine.
What kind of winter crops do you have planted?
So we have all your brassica varieties. We have mustards, Asian greens, pak choi, and let's see, a bunch of different varieties of spinach mixes, which are really, not spinach, I'm sorry, lettuce mixes with the Simply Salad series.
Freezing temperatures?
Yeah, everything's fine. And then just tons of Brussels sprouts and mustards and onions and leeks, and we'll have garlic coming soon. And we'll have kohlrabi, which is really fun. It's a fun looking plant. Most people aren't really familiar with it.
What about potatoes?
Potatoes are more of a summer.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you have turnips right now? What time is planting?
We don't have those right now, and it's a little difficult with our garden because we're not growing things from seed in the garden because we want the instant gratification like we do with the flowers. So we're producing everything in our greenhouse and then transplanting it when it's nearly fully grown. So that limits us on some of our root crops. Like we're gonna do, I don't know, we'll see how it all works out. But we don't have any right now, so.
All the food is grown organically?
I am using what I like to call responsible horticultural practices and producing the food. Again, with maintaining our aesthetic standards, but it's difficult to do things, officially, organically. But I'm using natural and biological products, nothing that I wouldn't eat myself on. So everything's safe to eat, that's edible, and I've had to use a little synthetic fertilizer on the pansies because they're very, very hungry. I didn't want to, but yeah, so I don't like to use the word organic because that's become such a branding and marketing term and difficult to define. And same with sustainable. There's all these words are getting, trademarked and labeled, and so I just like to say I'm growing things responsibly in our garden. Yes.
I've noticed all the grackles in the afternoon. Are they doing anything to the crops?
Mostly they're eating pests because we have a bunch of these little cabbage loopers that are eating all the brassicas, and they look like little green inchworms. And yeah, I haven't had, a few of our figs got pecked at by birds, but we haven't had many pest issues. We also have a hawk that hangs out at the test kitchen, so that helps too.
Another question I get all
Yeah.
the time. Where, you said they're coming from the food that's used that we, in little cups, is that's coming, where's the deals being at?
That's separate from
On the
our
other
garden.
top for that.
Yeah, and I just met for the first time the chef that prepares those samples, and she was going through and getting an updated list of what we have in the ground so her menu can more accurately reflect. But in our garden, it's more of a display garden. We can't produce the quantity that we need to feed as many people as we are. 'Cause how many samples are we going through a day?
It's like on a big weekend, like we had Thanksgiving weekend, we were doing about 2,500 samples a day. I'd say on average, we're doing probably around 1,000 a day, so it's a lot. And
Yeah,
there's no way we
to
couldn't
consistently
make that whole
produce
garden.
that much for those samples is just not feasible yet.
What's gonna happen with the food? That's the other question you get.
So-
The food I mean, where's it gonna go? What's
Yes.
gonna happen?
So initially, since I was focusing so much on just the installation and maintenance of the garden, I haven't had a chance to set up a distribution chain for our produce, and we were just very informally giving it out to our volunteers and horticulture staff. And so lots of times there'll be a basket of produce by the volunteer office. And but in the future, I would like to coordinate with local food banks and distribute our produce to them.
And again, I can speak to that as well. We already have been talking to, UT Southwestern is one of our partners that we do nutrition classes with, and they service several clinics in the community, specifically talking about the south and the west clinics that they work at. We'd like to supply them with some of the food, and also working with North Texas Food Bank. Again, though, if you look at the amount of harvest that we're able to get from a display garden, I think we also have to be wary of calling somebody up and say, here, we had 6 eggplants today. You know,
It's not worth
so
the trip.
There's part of that we trying to figure out that balance. So we may be at a point where it is where either our guests are able to take the food with them, you know, or we do continue to put it in the volunteer office. So that's kind of, as we're talking about growing pains, that's one of the ongoing things. What I think you can securely tell guests that ask about the food and the harvest is that we're not tossing it.
No.
I mean, it's not being
Yeah, we're not
thrown
wasting.
away.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yes.
I understood, I'm squeaky, forgive me. I understood that they were going to be cooking demonstrations. And
Yeah.
are they going to be related to the food that we're growing?
Okay, that's also going to be in my area to talk about. So I'll let
Yeah,
Preston-
I'm
if he
just
can
talking about
concentrate on the growing
what's in the
questions,
ground.
He can do that, and then I'll do the other.
Yes.
The food that you're growing in the greenhouses, where does that go? What is that used for? Is that
That's what we're planting here.
so everything in the greenhouse eventually will be planted
Yes.
over here?
And everything edible we have planted in the garden was grown
Yeah.
by our greenhouse grow. Yep.
I actually have a question. I know that the plants come from the greenhouse over to here. Is there any part of the cycle where plants that are here are removed and then go back to the greenhouse, or once they're spent here, are they spent?
Yeah, all our vegetable crops are just annual crops, so they're
Okay.
only good just for one season.
Okay.
And then we have, but we also have the orchard with fruit trees, which is a lot of fun. Yes?
Your greenhouse, and all that, I'm trying to understand something here for my benefit. I have a small little greenhouse.
Yeah.
Do you have to go through a hardening off process?
Yes. So
Bring
once,
them
when we
back
get
out,
the,
bring them here?
yeah, when we get them, sometimes they'll harden them off at the greenhouse before they haul them here. Or when I get them, we have a kind of holding area in the back where we have our plants that are waiting to go in the ground. And so they'll be back there for a few days.
So they're in the pots?
Yeah, they're in, a lot of them are in gallon pots or different, we have them in different sizes depending on the
So you
plant.
just still kind of shelter them?
Are there greenhouses on this property?
No,
or
not
are they
anymore.
located in Rockwell?
They're all in Rockwall right now. Yes.
Is it possible to tour the greenhouse?
That is not,
No, for the volunteers.
yeah, that y'all would have to coordinate that with,
It is possible. remind me after this and we'll schedule it. Could you do me one favor and just repeat the question back? Just, I don't know if the camera's going to hear
Okay.
you.
Yeah, so it was asked if it's possible to tour the greenhouse, and that's something you'll have to talk with Sean and coordinate, because that is, and we also have volunteer opportunities at the greenhouse, and they're always looking for some good hands.
I'm making a note now.
When you plant something like the artichokes that are planted really close together at first for people to see them, and
Yes.
that's wonderful, but then when they start getting larger and you have to separate them out, what happens to the ones that you take out?
If and when I do thin that crop, I'll probably put them in containers to be centerpieces, because the artichokes are, yeah, very nice. And they'll grow all winter and get some really good height.
And that would happen with other plants also?
Yes, yeah, we, like, I don't know if y'all noticed, but recently we removed the rosemary that was on the borders of the gardens and replanted it with dwarf yaupon, because that way we'll be able to hedge it and have a much more formal border. But we've been reusing all of that rosemary that we pulled out and using it for centerpieces and containers all throughout the garden. So yeah, we just move things around. We don't, the level we operate, there is a certain level of waste. It's just the nature of it. But we reuse as much as we can.
Does all of that go back to living earth to be composted?
Yeah, so nothing just ends up in a landfill. Anything that we do have to throw away gets processed into compost and is still useful.
So we're telling people it's really an ornamental garden. I mean, would that be a correct term?
Well, that's
what
what it is.
I would say, at the end of the day, we're a display garden.
Yeah,
Okay.
You know,
and that's what a
and I
potager.
can talk about that.
Yeah, and that's what a potager garden is. It's an ornamental vegetable garden that you can supplement your. It's kind of like a kitchen garden, and you can go out and get your herbs and a couple here or there, but it's not a farm. Yes.
And a couple of weeks ago, I listened to Jenny talk about her tulips, and they talked about when they compost them, they take them out and then they bring them back and use them in compost here, which I thought that was very interesting.
Yes. So yeah, we pay to have our plant waste hauled off and processed, and then buy it back and use it as soil amendment. So it's a circle. Yeah. Any other questions about the garden?
That looks beautiful.
Thank you. It's a labor of love. All right. Let's talk about some of the programming.
Thank you, Preston. Yes.
Yeah, I don't need that either. I can tell, my kids will attest to the fact that I'm a loud talker.
Oh,
Maybe sometimes a loud yeller. I know because there's several of you, almost about half the room, have never volunteered in ATP. So I'm going to back up just a tiny bit, just talk about ATP, like why it was put together and what the intent of the garden is. So very basic, it is a vegetable, herb, and fruit garden. As Preston mentioned, it's a potager garden, or potager is actually the correct French term, but we're Texan, we say potager. And it's an ornamental kitchen garden. So anytime I'm describing it to people, I do say that, the Dallas Arboretum, we are a display garden. We're constantly changing out not only our flowers, but the same way with the vegetables to show what would be growing during that particular season. It looks beautiful. So not only does it look beautiful, but you're also learning. And everybody right now, the general public, is so interested on knowing where their food is from, how it's grown. I know I've even learned things from in there, like I had no idea how quinoa grew, so to be able to see that when we first opened the garden was really fun, and even like we were talking about the artichokes. So there's definitely that component of it. So as people are even just walking through the garden, talking to the horticultural volunteers, they're able to ask about the plants, see how they grow, talk a little bit about, how do you know when to harvest? What do you do with them after you harvest them to know, if you remove a ton of the leaves or if you leave it, or, how you cut it up. And then the natural outpouring from that was to do cooking demonstrations and cooking classes. Was the original intent, it's like, oh great, this is a whole nother revenue source for us to do cooking classes and such. Not at all. And if you look at the schedule, most of our classes and things that we do are free with garden admission. And again, that goes back to our mission of education, wanting people to understand about where their food comes from, how they eat the food, how they prepare the food, especially in a healthy way. So with that being said, it's a little confusing when you talk about the type of program we have down there, because there's a lot, and they're in different kind of buckets of what we do. We've tried to give an overarching umbrella name to each type of event that we do to kind of help a little bit. We're still, again, trying to massage that and trying to understand how people are interacting with the information that we give them. But the type of programs that we have, one of them that's going on today, it's called Chef-tastic. So anytime you see where it says Chef-tastic on a schedule, that's typically a well-known or famous chef, either from the area or from the region. Hopefully you'll see it to where we have national chefs coming in too. They'll come in and prepare 1, 2, sometimes 3 dishes that are made with the seasonal vegetables. We give them a list that's provided by the Hort team of what's growing in the garden at that time. And they'll be able to do like an hour-long presentation where they're actually preparing the food in front of our guests, and then the guests get to sample what they've made at the end, which is really fun for the guests. So that we've had people in here like John Tizar from Knife, we've had Robert Lyford from Patina Green. Today we have Daniela Palelo from Chivo Divino. So it's, and we also had Smokey Rose out here on Saturday. So it's a fun way to kind of interact with people that, you know, like name brand chefs that you know, and also learn something and get to taste some delicious food. Because most of the time they're giving pretty hefty samples. I felt like I had an entire fettuccine dish from John Tizar, which was nice, and didn't have to pay for it because it's, again, free with garden admission. The other thing that we do that is no charge is, as I mentioned before, we have affiliations with some of the local colleges like UT Southwestern, their nutrition department, TWU, their nutrition department also, and then finally with El Centro Cooking Connection, their college and the cooking school there. So El Centro is probably the strongest connection. They are out here every Monday, and they do the same recipes for 1 month. So they'll repeat a recipe for the entire month of December. And what they're doing is just showing how you can take the vegetables that we're growing in the garden, cook them in a healthy way, something that's simple to do. You don't have to be a master chef to be able to do it. And those typically had been at 10 o'clock in the morning. We've just moved those to 11 this week because we think we'll get better attendance just because we have more people in the garden. And again, that's free with garden admission. UT Southwestern and TWU both did a series of classes. Those have ended right now. They're going to start them again in the spring when they've got their students kind of starting up again, because those are student-led. So right now for them to be able to try to do those classes is difficult because, as you can imagine, the kids are trying to finish up projects and papers and final exams, etc., to do that. The other thing that we have that we've just started goes under the umbrella name of Just a Taste. And that is vendors that would typically be out at your farmer's market, out at the Casa Linda marketplace, kind of a European market feel, but we just have them come in one at a time. They are coming in with their products that they are selling to our guests. And so we've had tamale folks in here, we've had people that do jams, jellies, pickles. Let's see what else I've spent my money on. I'm trying to remember. French pastry, what was that?
The pecan?
Yeah, we've had pecan company come in here that had all sorts of pecan things. Some of those people are demonstrating things and offering, all of them are offering samples, of course, of their product because they want people to be able to taste it, to be able to want to buy it. But those are, it's the intention with those is to fill up the days that we don't have cooking demonstrations or cooking classes, so that there's some kind of activity going on in that pavilion every single day. You know, we open this garden, we want people to enjoy it, we want to give them a reason to come down in there beyond just looking at the vegetables and experiencing walking through there, and having these vendors in are allowing us to do that. Plus we get 15% of their sales every day. So that doesn't hurt, because those are kind of a low lift project for us. As Sean mentioned, you know, we are highly dependent on volunteers for ATP, and we really appreciate everybody that has worked in there thus far. You know, when she was talking about the sampling, just again to bring it back to the folks that have not been down in ATP to volunteer, The intent of the samples, again, is to educate people about the vegetables, maybe introduce them to a vegetable they've never tried. I ran into somebody that said, I always thought I hated cauliflower, but I took a chance and I tasted the roasted cauliflower and it was wonderful, and I'm going to eat it tonight, you know. So that's the complete intent of doing that. It's not to, you know, try to feed people lunch or, you know, get a like midday snack, but just to educate them on what types of food there are and what they can taste. We do change that every week, and you know, it is, like I said, there's so many samples, there's a lot of work to be done with that, but it has really resonated with our guests here, and you hear a lot of them talking about it, and we are making some inroads there with, you know, educating them about the vegetables and introducing them to new foods. Additionally, I think what other classes we have. And then we're also, Nancy Nance has very kindly put together a schedule of classes that we're going to be introducing for horticultural information. When we first opened up, we had thought that we could do little mini classes for horticultural, so that at 1 o'clock every day that we could do like a little 10, 15-minute presentation. It hasn't really worked out that way, though, in the garden. It's hard to get a mass of people at one time, you know, at that specific time out in the garden. But to schedule an actual class, we can put out the content, know what people can know in advance, what they'll learn while they're there, and so we're getting that together so that we can promote it in the upcoming newsletter that's being worked on right now. Just upcoming things again for the spring, you know, we are currently scheduling cooking classes, the cooking demos, you know, getting those in there, because the more that we can tell people in advance, the better that we can do in getting attendance there. You know, definitely our guests are just learning. You all are going to play a huge part in that and letting people know what goes on in the garden. Because as Sean mentioned, you know, we have, especially with our members, everybody's a creature of habit. I know I'm one. You come in the entry plaza and you just kind of start veering off to the right and never even look to the left, and you miss out on, you know, obviously this beautiful new garden and everything that we have to offer there. So the more that you all can talk about it as you're driving a tram, as you're working the information booth, if you're just out in the middle and you're one of the Ask Me volunteers, I mean, any opportunity that you have to promote the garden and the type of programming that we're doing there, even to push people to the website to say, hey, there's something going on there every day. You really need to check out the website and look at what's going on there. That's going to help us and help them, because it's going to be a great opportunity and a fun place for them to go. I would say also I want to call out Carl, because one of the other things that we do as part of the cooking demos and cooking classes is that we do videotape those. We've still got some growing pains with that too, that we're working on to be able to have that content either in snippets or full-blown programming, to have that on YouTube and to be able to push that out again, to be able to promote the classes and such to the general public. Because they're just learning that we are an alternative to going to Central Market, to Sur La Table, to any of the places that offer cooking classes. So we've got a pretty big uphill battle on that. But what a more beautiful place to take a cooking class than right here, because once you're done, you get to walk out in the garden, and it's beautiful. So, are there any questions for me? I'm sure there's tons.
Samples that are left over on Sunday. There's a lot yesterday.
Yes.
Or Sunday.
All right. The question was, what do we do with leftover samples when it's Sunday afternoon? Unfortunately, at this point in time, we are just disposing of those, because, and part of that is just the amount of time that they've been in and out of refrigeration and handled. We're we are being very careful with that, just to ensure, you know, guest safety and food handling safety, which is why anybody that's done the sampling, they have to be food handler certified.
Is there any chance of ever getting biodegradable containers for the samples?
The question was, is there any chance of getting biodegradable containers for the samples? I don't know, I'll have to check into that. I know that we were working on the plates that we had for the samples for the classes. I do know that those were biodegradable. So we do have some of those available, and I just have to work and see what we can do with that.
And they do have utensils made of corn now.
Yes. Yeah, the statement was we do have utensils made out of corn. We can get it. Any other questions? Well, again, really, really appreciate you all. If you have any kind of questions about the programming at ATP, and I say, look at the website, please ask me or the other staff members, Tori Parsons or Megan Lucas, and we'll be happy to answer any of those questions. Really appreciate y'all's help in volunteering down there. So thank you very much.
Okay, so now that you all know everything about ATP, I expect everyone in here to sign up. But seriously, if you have any questions about what you want to do, or you don't know what you want to do, you think you want to volunteer down there, but you're not sure where, it can seem a little bit overwhelming. Like any place in the Arboretum to volunteer, it is a little overwhelming. There's a lot of information, but we will help you. We'll give you the information. We have handbooks for all this stuff. Usually you have a partner. Sometimes you don't, unfortunately. I'm not going to lie. But we do appreciate every single one of you. Rachel and I mean, you guys make our jobs fun and easy, and Laura and Preston would say the same. So we also I want to mention before I forget, we're also doing, and this is ATP and then garden-wide, we're putting together kind of a task force to, and don't ask me, I don't know too much information about it, to just kind of get some ideas about what could we do, what do you guys like to do. There's so many things in Dallas to do, and we're up there high on that list of places to be and things to do in Dallas, and we just want to make sure we stay there. So we got to keep up with the times and plan these fun events and have these wonderful things out there. So if you're interested or you have any ideas, always just shoot me an email. It doesn't matter how silly you think it is. I mean, just bring them on, and I'll always pass it on to the appropriate person who works in that department. I mean, I've gotten emails from there's water over here to let's have the elephants out and roll the pumpkins down the sale. So they're all everywhere. Anyway, before we close, any other final questions? No? Yes.
Here I go again, the opportunities to tour the creators.
Yes.
Well, that would just be something that would be awesome, maybe you'll probably do it.
So that's a great idea. We did that with with our TLC kids, and for those of you that don't know, let me stop this because I'm not even standing in front of it. And